Becky and I recently spent a week in Montana where we stayed with my parents. They live outside of a little town called Ennis in the Madison River Valley. It's about 90 minutes from Bozeman. So they picked us up from the airport and brought us to their home, which is on a 20-acre plot of land that used to be a ranch. And there they have a great little home, a few horses, and plenty of space for their two dogs, Bandit and Piper, to roam around. While this wasn't my first time in Montana, it was my first time seeing their new home, which was in and of itself a delight to get to see. This was Becky's first time to Montana, which was special as well. After we landed in Bozeman, we took it easy, and then we went on a hike the next day to a peak called the Helmet. This is in the Lee Metcalf Wilderness area, which was only about 20 minutes from my parents' house. The trail was honestly beautiful.
This isn't nice. I don't know what nice is.
Unfortunately, Montana and the Mountain West and Northwest regions are having some problem with smoke and wildfires burning right now, which meant that a lot of our views from the valleys were covered in smoke. But luckily on the hike, everything was clear, and it was as if there wasn't a smoke layer in the valley, which was really quite special and fantastic, because we were worried that it might be difficult to breathe with the smoke and that our eyes would be burning and just that it would be an unpleasant hike. It was the complete opposite. Such a joyful hike. You can see the switchbacks up along the mountainside, which lead to these series of beautiful, beautiful views of the mountains nearby. That is the Sphinx, another peak that is really close to the Helmet, which we didn't climb, but the trail did look like it went up to the top of the Sphinx, which is would be pretty cool to do on another hike. We pretty much stayed together the entire time. My parents are really active and go on hikes regularly, among other workouts and fitness routines. So we were able to just keep cruising and stick through it. There you can see the Helmet. We hiked to the saddle between the two, basically. Once we left the trees, we get to this meadow, this grassy meadow, where we took it easy and ate some lunch, snacked. This was about 5.5 miles from the trailhead, with quite a lot of elevation gain. Way more elevation gain than Becky and I are used to in Pennsylvania. But the views were spectacular and certainly worth the effort. It was a fantastic hike. The dogs also did great. Bandit and Piper are Australian Shepherds who just got their hair cut, so they usually have longer hair. On the way back down, the sun came out. It was pretty hot. I think it was in the 90s. And without the tree coverage, we were heating up, so Becky and I decided to run back down the trail. Which, in and of itself, the downhill, you go faster, but running it was even quicker. And we had a really nice time running back down to the start of the trail. Plenty of water too. We stayed along a creek most of the time, which was great because it's pretty warm out. The next day we got up and went to Virginia City, which is only about 30 minutes from Ennis. It's a historical landmark that was originally one of 7 mining towns in the area. It was considered a ghost town for a while, but someone bought up a bunch of the buildings and tried to restore them and maintain that old historic look. Some of the buildings you can peek into and see how it was furnished back in the old days, which I thought was really, really cool. It's a small town. You can take a horse ride in a horse-drawn carriage. You can take a bus ride around with tours. Great little place to stop and spend the afternoon. Becky and I got some burritos for lunch. My mom and dad and friend Nick got some food from another restaurant. Also, there's a really great candy shop, which was fun. I haven't gotten candy like that in a while. Then the next day, we went to the Beaverhead Deer Lodge National Forest. This took us about 3 hours to get to. It is southwest of Ennis, and we stopped in the town of Dillon to pick up Nick, who had visited us in Virginia City. We walked along the Odell Creek Trail to Odell Lake and then kept going a little bit farther to this lake called Lake of the Woods. It was another beautiful day. Pretty warm, but it's just not humid in Montana like it is in the mid-Atlantic region like Pennsylvania, so the heat really wasn't too bad. And luckily the elevation didn't really impact Becky and I.
That's just about the nicest bridge I've ever seen. Yeah, where's the concession stand?
We didn't see a single soul on this trip. It was pretty buggy because some rain had blown in recently, but with the help of some bug spray, it wasn't too bad. Becky and I are still dealing with some of our bug bites, having refused the bug spray at first, and then later taking it gladly. This is Odell Lake. It's quite large and covered in lily pads. It was really nice. We only stopped briefly and then we kept on going to the next lake. This whole trail system was really well maintained and had campsites sprinkled throughout, which would make for, I think, really fantastic camping and backpacking. We didn't bring our backpacking gear, so we stuck to just day hikes. Here's the main campsite area where we set up our little temporary camp for the afternoon. Unfortunately, it's so dry and Montana's been in a drought that we weren't allowed to start a campfire or anything, which that's all right. But we brought lunch and enjoyed the food and started to fish not long after that. This is my first time fly fishing. My dad's been doing it for a little bit, same with Nick. Pretty much right away, Nick caught a fish, which was awesome. He caught the most out of all of us. My dad caught a few, and then pretty soon I got in the water and caught a fish after about an hour of fly fishing. The lake was filled with cutthroat trout, which have this red skin along their throats, so it looks like their throats have been cut, which is pretty gruesome, but makes sense why they're called that. Once I got the hang of the casting, which just from watching others and having them coach me, Yeah, it was just like a total blast to be in the water and enjoy it. You can see me getting my line all tangled up. The water was great, a little cool but not cold. The sun was rolling in and out. It was the best when the sun was out. Here's me catching my fish. We just caught and release. In the mid-afternoon, we packed up our things and hiked back to the truck. Some storm clouds were rolling in. We heard and saw some thunder and lightning, but luckily we were able to get back to the car without hitting any rain. Since it was a gradual downhill, the return hike went pretty quick. The next day we took it easy, and instead of going for another hike, we spent the day in Bozeman, just Becky and I. We had a great brunch at a spot called the Nova Cafe. They were able to really accommodate their meals to make them vegan, which is great. There was plenty to do and see. We got lunch at the co-op. They had plenty of food already prepared that we just enjoyed ourselves. We stopped at a family friend's house where my dad has an auto shop where he works on cars, and they had some nice horses and goats that we got to spend a little time with. We then went to the Gallatin County Fair. We saw it on the news that it was starting up, so we looked it up. It was right in Bozeman. So once we finished exploring the town, we went over to the county fair. Went on the Ferris wheel, went on the Gravitron, drank some lemonade, watched some dirt bikers do some sick tricks off the ramp. It was really about as county fair as you get. And of course, it wouldn't be a county fair without a little bit of funnel cake. On our last full day of the trip, we went on an ATV ride with a little hike in the middle in the Tobacco Root Mountains, which again are only like 20 minutes from where my parents live in Ennis. My dad loaded the four-wheelers up into the horse trailer and we drove over there and just kind of explored around on the ATVs. We had a trail map that we kind of made a little plan with. We then eventually changed the plan to go somewhere else. We intended this to be just a couple-hour outing, maybe with a little hike, a little fishing, nothing too strenuous, but instead we ended up doing something quite challenging, but ultimately extremely fun and rewarding. The landscape here is just beautiful. The mountains seem to never stop, and it's seeing them so quickly on the four-wheeler was quite a nice change of pace from hiking and driving around in the truck. A local who we passed on a four-wheeler recommended we drive up this hill to this overlook, this little peak of the mountain, and it sure was worth it. We had a snack and then decided to change our plan and seek out this place called Bell Lake that we saw on the map. We knew it might be a little difficult to get to, but we decided to just go for it. The four-wheelers did extremely well. A lot of it was improved dirt roads that were well maintained, but some of it was real dicey off-road tracks, and the four-wheelers treated us fantastic. Something cool about the national forests in Montana and different wilderness areas is sometimes they're just open for cows to graze in. It's a real fun surprise to drive by a bunch of cattle just hanging out. We parked the four-wheelers where the ATV trail stopped. It was fenced off. Put on our backpacks and hoofed it up about 700 feet in a mile, which is a really steep elevation gain for such a short distance. I think it was a little more treacherous than anyone was imagining or hoping, but usually when hiking, something that is difficult is ultimately worth it, usually. Well, that looks really steep because I think it's mostly intended for snowmobiles in the winter. There's also a really nice platform for a yurt that they must set up in the winter. Once we crested the ridge, Bell Lake came into view. It was this deep blue, incredible mountain lake, unlike anything I've ever really experienced. Dad and Mom were not far behind. Once we caught our breaths, we found some shelter because Big storm clouds were rolling in. It looked like it might rain a bit. So we enjoyed the lake. We fished for a bit. Didn't catch anything, but we saw some fish jumping.
Starting to rain a little. Got some thunder. Storm coming in. Just fishing a little bit. And we'll hike back out of here to the ATVs and get home.
Luckily, we avoided most of the rain, and none of us got particularly wet or downpour, which I think we got lucky with because the storm really rolled through and did some damage in other parts with the high winds. I ran down the hill, which was quite fun. We got back on the four-wheelers and made our way back to the truck. It went pretty quick when you're focused on getting to a specific destination and there's the looming threat of bad weather. You just sort of focus in and get it done. That was our last major adventure on the trip. Hopped on the plane the next day and flew back to Pennsylvania. We had a great time in Montana. It's really nice to be able to spend time with family, enjoy the outdoors, see some new places. I'm sure we'll be back